trying to impose its capitalistic controls on the economy, and Guyana is firmly resisting that. The same applies to England, so they're going to accept the aid from the only country that's willing to give it with no strings attached. That is China. China's asking for no controls or nothing at all. It's just a long-term loan. So, that's where it is. Things look good for us on that front, and we are certainly glad to hear that China has made this assistance offer. We're glad for its aid to Zambia that's standing up against USA. Perhaps China, at least, is manipulating the vacuum, power vacuum in the Caribbean, because USA is preoccupied with Africa. In the long run, it will certainly still aid an independent course for the third world nations in the Caribbean. The book, and that's what it really is, New Times, all devoted to the destruction of Huey. The Party's Over, written by Paul Avery, who used to be a liberal, who spent several days in Redwood Valley and secretly checked out all of our healings and found that I had unusual, miraculous powers, he said. In those days he talked against the Vietnam War and seemed to understand our socialist course. But he sold out. Even Gavin, the editor of the Chronicle, who has now left the Chronicle, is very friendly to us, is back with the Baltimore Sun, said that Paul Avery had questionable connections. The inference was he was with the CIA. He spoke at our congregation one time, as you know, championing a Chinese young man. But that group the Chinese young man was with had unquestionable mafia connections. Anyway, Paul Avery and Kate Coleman write this book. The last we saw Paul Avery, he was trying to debate with his conscience as to whether he should come into People's Temple, but he was high on dope and drinking all the time. So now he sold his soul to the White Company store. The beginning of the article. Several weeks ago, a 30-year-old black woman went to police in Oakland, California, to report she had been kidnapped and sexually assaulted. She said the incident had occurred 2 days earlier in the afternoon. The woman gave this account. Again, no names, so it makes it so easy to destroy a man. While waiting for a bus in crowded downtown Oakland, note that, she had stepped into a phone booth to make 2 quick calls. She spoke first with her fiancé and was about to call her mother when a gold Cadillac pulled up nearby and a huge man got out. The woman later guessed he stood 6 feet 7 inches and weighed about 400 pounds. He said, "Mr. Newton would like to see you," gesturing towards the late model Cadillac. "I don't know any Newton," the woman replied. That's hardly likely, in that Huey Newton is a word that anyone would know in Oakland. A light-skinned black man with a large afro got out of the Cadillac and beckoned to her. Then the big man, indicating a gun in his pocket, said, "You'd better come with me." He pressed up against her and she could feel the barrel. He warned that if she yelled for help, "I'll blow your brains out all over the phone booth." Both men then shoved her into the back of the car, and the big man took the wheel, leaving the other man in back with the woman. "You know where to go," he told the driver, and the car sped off toward the industrialized section of West Oakland, where it pulled in behind a building and stopped. The man in back snorted some white powder, there again indicating he's a coke freak, and began bragging to the woman about his sexual prowess, about what a superior man and lover he was. He started to unbutton her blouse, then tried to lift up her t-shirt underneath. She shoved him away. "No bitch pushes me around," he yelled, smacking her back and forth across the face. He went for her shirt again, pulled it up and began fondling and kissing her breast. When she resisted, he burned her left wrist severely with a cigarette and called her a street whore. The driver turned around in his seat. "Huey, can't you see she isn't a street woman?" Imagine kidnapping and raping a woman and he would call Huey by his first name. He urged that they let her go. but the man in back told the driver that he should just follow orders. They always appeal to people in a movement by such tactics. They paint the driver not quite as bad as Huey, so if he ever wants to turn against Huey, he can feel that he won't get it in the end. However, after they use all thinks, they either disappear, get killed, or end up jailed themselves. Note that is one of the clever tactics that they use. At that, the driver pulled out a pistol and directed the woman to do what she was told. See, just painting the driver as brainwashed, but not really mean, because he was asking for mercy for the woman. And of course, it's rather ridiculous that Huey is a very short man, much shorter than myself, and he's supposed to be able to order a man around that has the gun behind the wheel. 400 pounds, quite unlikely. She stopped all resistance then, and when the man in the back seat ordered her to funnel his penis through his pants, she obeyed. But he was dissatisfied with her efforts. He ordered her to excite him, yet despite her attempts, he failed to get an erection. Finally, he pulled the woman's slacks down to her knees and ordered that she spread her legs while he performed cunnilingus, using his tongue on her vagina. It lasted about 5 minutes. Afterward, he went through the woman's purse and took out $46 in cash. Now imagine a man with a late model gold Cadillac needs to steal, and $46. Now he's a rapist, a kidnapper, and a thief. Anybody with the right mind can see through these lies, but people don't, or these magazines wouldn't sell. He carefully examined her wallet and warned her, "Now I know who you are and where you live. If I hear anything about this, you'll be taken care of." Seeing pictures of her 3 children, he threatened to kill them too. A big man headed the Cadillac for North Oakland, where the woman was released. Later, she estimated the ordeal had lasted about 2.5 hours. The man in back handed her $5 to catch a cab, he said, and threatened to kill her if she took action. Badly shaken, the woman went to her mother's house. Her brother and her fiancé, her boyfriend, arrived soon after. She had been so affected by the experience that she fainted several times that evening, until finally her family brought her to the emergency room at Doctor's Hospital in Oakland, where she told the examining physician the whole story. The doctor urged her to call the police. I think the doctor would have done more than that, because a doctor is a criminal unless they demand that the police be brought into such things. But the woman was too frightened. It was 2 days before she reported the incident. My, how convenient. And then only at the urging of her boyfriend, her fiancé. The woman told Oakland police that her assailant was Huey Newton, founder and leader of the Black Panther Party. She said she had recognized him from seeing him on TV and in the papers, but she identified him again from police photos, and from the sheaf of photos, she unhesitatingly identified the big man as Robert Hurd, Newton's 6'8" bodyguard, who has been variously described as weighing between 380 and 470 pounds. Police began the paperwork on her complaint, anticipating the arrest of Newton and Hurd on charges of kidnapping and sexual assault. But the woman refused to press charges. She remembered the threats and was terrified. My. See, that's so convenient. There's no police record, so they can use all kinds of lies. Now, this woman certainly was perfectly safe to do that. Black Panther Party had no clout, and if it had been that she really didn't want to, the police could have done so on the complainant themselves. They had the right, and as much as they hate Huey and his socialism, they certainly would have done it. Anyone can see through that lie that has any sense, but USA public has no sense. After various parts of the woman's story surfaced locally, Newton and his lawyer, Sheldon Otis, insisted that Newton had nothing to do with the attack. Assuming, of course, that it even took place, Otis said. They said he had been exonerated, freed, that is, by a privately commissioned lie detector test. He'd been shown to be innocent. But in a source close to the district attorney's office, now imagine, source close, what the hell does that mean? Wastebasket? But a source close to the district attorney's office says the test was poorly conducted, that only 4 questions were asked, and that the 2 dealing with sexual assault were unspecific enough that Newton might have been able to pass a test he would otherwise have failed. Nevertheless, Newton's defense team made copies of the lie detector test available to reporters as a way of refuting the woman's story. But a refutation or denial was unnecessary. Even with prodding from the police and assurances of protection, the woman still refused to press charges, fearing Panther retribution, retaliation. I never heard of Newton ever being charged. There was certainly no news about it, and if he'd done it or been accused of it, we'd read something about it. They send me all such clippings. These lies are too much. The woman had good reason to be afraid. Over the last few years, Huey Newton and other Panthers have moved like a street gang of hoodlums through the Oakland area, says the so-called socialist New Times. It's just a ruse to make U.S. look like they're liberal, to have these magazines, New Times, New West. They're sisters, you know. New West is the one that was used to try to destroy us. They have, say, reliable sources. Again, what are these reliable sources? No names. Committed a series of violent crimes, including arson, setting buildings on fire with people in them, extortion, threatening people to kill them if they don't give them money, beatings, even murder. Unlike the skirmishes that marked the party's infancy in the late 60s, the recent incidents appear to have no political explanation whatsoever. The Panthers are no longer under siege by the police. Oh my God, that's too much. Being that he's been, since he got back from Cuba, charged with 4 more murders, even one on a young woman that didn't even exist, according to record. And this is not self-defense. It seems to be nothing but senseless criminality directed in most cases against other blacks. See how clever? To get the black population divided from Huey. And sometimes it's done against Panthers themselves, to cause the Panthers then, there's still a few of them left, to be paranoid. Most of these crimes remain open on police ledgers. The victims are too frightened, or the evidence is too circumstantial to bring Newton or his Panther subordinates to trial. Circumstantial means there's no evidence. Only a few of the incidents, in fact, have been covered in the Oakland and San Francisco press. Naturally, that's what we're going to say now, and how anxious the San Francisco press and Oakland have been to destroy him. In the murders, they surely mentioned all of that. So, and all these other stupid setups and frame-ups. But now this is the way they covered it, because even the incidents were not covered in the Oakland and San Francisco press because there were no sources. Hell, you don't have to have sources. This is being written entirely without sources or evidence. Some have never been reported to the police even. Oh, now that's nice. Convenient. Now, after 6 months of interviews with disaffected party intimates, the police and others, it is possible to learn the scope of recent Panther violence. It is possible, too, to see how the wave of brutality has affected the Black Panther Party, and the effects has been great. Already, the party's support in the community has diminished. That's exactly what this magazine wants to do, to stop it all. Its grant money has dried up, and valuable workers and supporters have left for good cause. Oh, how beautiful this New Times is used by the establishment to destroy progressive forces, while all the time New Times magazine has appeared to be progressive. But now it's showing its true colors in this horrible murder in press against Huey. The Panthers Daycare Center grade school is still operating, as is the free health clinic. But these institutions exist side by side with another Newton creation of an entirely different criminal sort. They won't even close those down, you can see. New Times has learned that there is a secret wing of the party, assembled originally by Newton as his own palace guard, loyal to him personally, against any contender. Within the party, the group is known as the Squad. By all appearances, the Squad is simply a team of Newton's bodyguards, but they often operate like underworld hitmen. An uncanny duality has grown up around the Panthers, a myth and a reality, difficult to penetrate and sort out. Over the years, many supporters have regarded Panther militancy as a legitimate response to police brutality and the country, USA's long history of racism. Now confronted by Panther behavior that seems to defy explanation, some Bay Area blacks and leftists nevertheless continue to protect and defend the party. That's why they're writing this article, to stop all defense. There has been a fear that any expose of the Panthers would play into the hands of reactionary fascist forces and hurt the entire black community. Party support has dwindled, but to many people still the Panthers, and above all Huey Newton, are liberators of oppressed blacks, heroes standing up to malignant police forces, great teachers in the vein of Mao Zedong and Che Guevara. Also illegal government actions aimed with particular zeal at the Panthers by the FBI and other agencies, as revealed 2 years ago by the Senate Intelligence Committee, and subsequent Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, created a well of sympathy for the party and suspicion of efforts to expose it. It ought to, because the FBI was using dirty tricks and lies and crimes to discredit them under their COINTELPRO program. That's my commentary. Anything decent about Huey will be my commentary, because this is nothing but a total smear. But there is growing sense among many sympathizers and ex-Panthers that it is Huey Newton himself who has discredited the party and by seemingly gratuitous violence, uncalled for, betrayed the principles on which it was founded. I'm sorry to have to read you to hear my voice, but I only have one copy and I'm afraid it'll get destroyed, so I want you all to hear it. It was in the fall of 1966 that Huey Newton, the son of a Baptist minister, who I healed, by the way, and healed his mother of cancer, founded the Black Panther Party, along with his friends Bobby Seale and David Hilliard. The Oakland-based Panthers marked a departure from the trend of black cultural nationalism, then on the rise in the ghetto, a nationalism that declared all whites the enemy. The party argued that black liberation could not be won without the support of white revolutionaries and radicals, and it welcomed them to the fight against a common ruling class enemy. And that's why the system was after him. They didn't mind black nationalism, separatism, but oh my, integrate the working class, black and white? No, Huey, you had to be killed for that. The Panthers' 10-point program went further than any nationalist group demand by calling for all power to the people and the armed self-defense of blacks and Indians and minorities. In Oakland particularly, blacks had little power. That predominantly black city was run, until very recently, by a white right-wing, I'm calling it, they don't call it that, they call it Republican, but it was right-wing. Republican administration and a police department described by a local black politician as no different from the most rabid white cracker police force in a small Mississippi town. To keep an eye on the police, Newton and his fellow Panthers began patrolling Oakland ghetto streets on weekend nights, defiantly toting shotguns, pistols, and a copy of the California Penal Code. The Panthers, though, were careful to remain within the law. They advised Oakland residents of their legal rights and acted as an armed presence to prevent police brutality. The effects on the left was electrifying. The outcry on the right, fascist right wing that's growing night and day in USA, prompted state legislatures to draft a bill in California that made it illegal to bear unconcealed arms. You couldn't even carry them openly, as all white people do in every little country town. In May 1967, a delegation of Panthers went to the California state capitol carrying their weapons. They were lobbying against the bill, but the furor unleashed by their disciplined military presence assured its passage. The trip to the Capitol was well publicized, but the incident that would catapult Newton to national prominence came later on October 28, 1967. Newton's car was stopped by Oakland police that night, leading to an exchange that ended with Newton shot in the stomach, charged with murdering the other officer, John Fry. Newton pleaded innocent. His story was that Fry had called him nigger and probed his genitals while searching him. He said that he had been shot point blank in the stomach, and he had many witnesses to that too, and had not shot back. But in 1968, a jury convicted Newton of voluntary manslaughter, and he went to prison. In fact, in face of the evidence that a policeman had shot a policeman, that's what they'll do, the ruling class, to get at someone like myself or Huey, an activist. While in prison, Newton became a political martyr. Free Huey buttons cropped up everywhere. and the West Coast-based Peace and Freedom Party dedicated itself to support the Panthers in a black-white coalition, adopted Free Huey as its principal slogan. The Peace and Freedom Party also made Eldridge Cleaver its candidate for President of the USA in 1968. Cleaver, the celebrated Soul on Ice author, now born again to Jesus, helped run the Panthers when Newton went to prison. It was Cleaver's idea, too, to parade those guns in California. He might have been a provocateur even then. Who knows? It was certainly a stupid thing to do when they were trying to get a bill to ban the carrying of arms, to march into the legislature at that point in time openly with arms. Whatever, it was a mistake, however well-intentioned. During this period, white leftists and liberals flocked excitedly to the Black Panther Party because they saw it as a non-racist revolutionary vanguard. The party was self-consciously modeled after the Algerian, FLN, that we saw in that movie, The Battle of Algiers. It was modeled, Huey modeled directly after them, with its urban guerrilla warfare tactic of deliberate skirmishes with police. Leftists saw Newton as the only black leader dedicated to Marxist-Leninism, but also capable of transforming ghetto blacks into a disciplined revolutionary army. Newton affected a swagger stick to go along with the party's militarism, and went by a variety of lofty titles over the years, showing his ego, including Minister of Defense, the Supreme Commander, the Supreme Servant, the Servant, and most recently President. Nothing wrong with that. Sound like necessary titles. The DAP, a dictatorship that represents the people. In predominantly black Oakland, only 2% of the police force was then made up of minorities, even though better than half of Oakland is black. I'm making that point. Panther claims that the police were an occupying army, and that the law enforcement agencies were out to crush the party, obviously, even with the help of so-called progressive magazines now, like New Times. Were concepts embraced immediately by white leftists, of course, because it was easily seen that Oakland police were racist and an occupying army in a black community. When in 1968 and 1969, these law enforcement agencies raided Panther offices across the country, resulting in hundreds of arrests and a long list of dead and wounded blacks, I might mention killed by the police. See the unquiet grave of Fred Hampton. New Times, May 31, 1974. That's put in there to make them appear liberal and concerned about blacks being killed, to dignify them as liberals. But no, of course no one is going to go back to 1974 in a library to find a New Times magazine. Panthers and many white leftists alike viewed armed struggle as coming very soon, imminent. The money began to flow into Panther coffers as never before, and prominent white liberals and leftists, including such people as then Yale University